So millionaires are leaving the UK, and what impact will that have on the property market and on property investors? Some 10,000 millionaires have left the UK in 2024. That's more than double the amount that left in 2023. Why they're leaving, what's going to be left of the UK, and if every millionaire leaves, will Vice President J.D. Vance be describing the UK as a nation of peasants? To discuss all that, I'm joined by John Howard. Are we going to be a peasant nation when all the millionaires flee?
Well, the Labour government will have you believe that the only people leaving the country are multi-millionaires, the really, really big guys and girls, you know, the billionaires. They're the ones who are leaving. The truth is, we both know friends who are leaving the country. And yes, they're worth a few £1 million. They wouldn't describe themselves as multi-millionaires. They would describe themselves as probably as multi-millionaires. They probably spend, I'm guessing, 150, 200,000 a year in the UK, or were doing so, perhaps a bit more. Maybe employing a few people, gardeners, cleaners, and all the rest of it. And that's what you've got to remember. They're not billionaires by any means, but they've had enough. They had enough of paying the high taxes. The kids have either left school or they've decided that they can get them educated cheaper abroad.
The private school VAT thing has been a big issue for people with
I
two, 3
agree.
kids.
They can go to one of these English-speaking schools abroad. And I think they're in a position to do so these days. Even if they're still working, people can, work from their laptops. Even property people, to a point, probably can work abroad a little bit, or they might have a right-hand person in the country doing it for them. So life's changed. I was talking to a friend of mine, and his son travels around the world. I said, "What does he do?" He says something with, internet job, I don't know what he does, social media stuff. And he stays in any country about 3 months, then moves on to the next. And that's, a lot of young people are doing that. So life has changed. I think you need to look after these millionaires, multi-millionaires, certainly better than they have done. They are the entrepreneurs. They are the driving force, the engine room of the UK. And, they don't need, as they're proving, they don't need to live in the UK. They don't need to work, and they don't need to employ anyone. So we need these people.
It's the engine of economic growth.
Absolutely,
and,
it is.
I think there are several things that I know anecdotally. I've got a friend of mine who sells luxury homes in Buckinghamshire, and he's talking about, he was telling me pretty much 2 in 5 of the sellers of £2 million plus homes are selling because they're moving abroad.
Amazing.
Which is quite extraordinary.
And scary.
And the movement above the £1.5 million price property is pretty much, they're very hard to shift, shall we say. Because I think people are getting, for the first time, you'd think people aspire, but they're afraid. They don't know whether they're going to be clobbered with 30 grand a year council tax just because, you got broad shoulders, so you should be able to bear more.
Should be paying bear more. And of course, the government think it's all about Mayfair. They think it's all about billionaires in Mayfair and everywhere else in central London. But those guys probably don't pay a lot of UK tax anyway. But the ones we're talking about pay hundreds of thousands in tax. That's what the other thing people are forgetting. They're not sitting on the side. They're not sitting on their backside doing nothing. These people. They're working
within the. The phrase I always love is you got the have-nots, the haves and the have-nots. But within the top 1%, you've got the have-yots and the have-nots.
Absolutely.
So the gulf between the top and the bottom of the top 1% is massive.
It's huge.
And when people think about the top 1%, they assume it's all multi-billionaires, Monaco, boats, private jets and all of that. But just the people, like a friend of mine, for example, who's moving abroad, has got 3 kids in private schools. He's got a successful business. But to make those private school fees work with the VAT, he's got to pull out much more than 100k in personal salary, and then past that level the tax is just so punitive. When you draw out more than 100, your company is successful, it's doing great things, but it feels as though you're giving an unfair proportion.
Totally.
When you draw out more than 100k, but you have to.
Totally. And the inland revenue consider a millionaire to be someone that earns more than £250,000 a year. Which that's what they consider a millionaire to be.
Well, I mean, it's millionaire liquid assets. I mean, what these figures are all based on dollar millionaires.
Yeah.
And that's based on liquid assets.
Yeah.
As opposed to income, and it might be a combination of the two.
There's lots of very wealthy people in this country, but they haven't got £1 million stuck in the bank.
That's true. That's true. But the thing is, this is going to have a big effect on the luxury property market. We've talked about the suburban luxury homes. We're already seeing that in central London, of course.
Down to 2006 prices, they think, in central London.
It's not as it's not an attractive destination that it once was. And I think, you know, when we talk about millionaires leaving the country, we're missing out on something big, because we're not factoring in the loss of millionaires who would normally come into the country. Yeah. I mean, for years, we were a magnet.
Yeah, and we encouraged them.
And we encouraged them.
We encouraged the Russians as well.
And the non-dom thing, I mean, although we're not non-doms, I don't see what's wrong with it, because if you have come to the UK and you've made your money outside of the UK, and you make that money outside of the UK, then that's not taxed here. No. It's only what you bring to the UK that you're taxed on.
The argument
so that seems fair.
I agree. And the argument on the non-doms is that, oh well, they only pay 30,000, 100,000 nominal tax. But look what they're doing when they're here. Look at the restaurants they're going to. Look at the cars they're buying. Look at look at all the luxury goods they buy. That's what the knock-on effect all the way down.
Yes.
That's what people don't. Oh, the government just don't get. They're a government of envy, and the Tories weren't a lot better, because they're the ones who started all this non-dom silly business of cutting it, because they thought it was a popular move and getting a few votes. Well, that didn't work very well.
Do you think that this situation with larger properties on larger lots will create an opportunity for people who want to buy the 1930s properties and knock them down and build 2 or 3 on the side?
I suppose on occasions it might help, but that's a bit of a stretch, I think.
I think it's a bit of a stretch, and I think it works particularly well with councils who have, and this is my hope for the planning reforms, there are councils which have been okay with those houses being knocked down for flats.
Yes.
Now, when you can suddenly knock down that house and build a brand new block of 12 or 18 flats, that's a different proposition. Yeah. And I would hope that the planning reform allows for that. Yeah. Because there are lots of downsizable homes and all the rest of it. And it is a worry. I think people are worried by things like wealth taxes, by things like very high council taxes on larger homes.
Well, I think the wealth tax is something that it's quite a popular. There's quite a popular movement regarding this wealth tax, and what is why on earth are we going to be taxing the wealthiest people in this country that create the wealth in the first place for everyone else? It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Absolute madness. It's nonsense.
I think we've lost the plot. We are losing the plot.
Totally.
If we want the country to be rich and people to prosper, fundamentally the UK has got to make more stuff that other people in the world want to buy, and we've got to sell that stuff in a greater quantity than we import. And until we do that, there's no point saying, well, you've got a little bit more, so I want a bit of that.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's the entrepreneurs in this world, the people watching this show. We're all entrepreneurs, we're all hustlers trying to make a living one way or the other. We're the wealth creators. And, you've got the government and the people that work within the government. We need administrators in the government, of course we do. But they're not creating any wealth. Government don't create wealth. Mm. They spend the wealth that has been created, the tax on hopefully sensible things, not always. But it's the entrepreneurs in this country.
Yes.
That make the money and employ people. And, to try and not encourage them to stay is absolute madness.
It should be, we should be doing more to attract them.
Sure.
You know, because if you want the public services, you've got to attract the wealth creators who are going to pay the tax to do it. But no one can explain how those taxes really work. Like if you've got a company and it owns a ton of properties, and those properties have gone up 30% this year. Wonderful. So do we tax you on a percentage of that increase because the shares have gone up? And then if we do, what happens if the rent roll hasn't gone up and you don't have the cash flow to pay that tax? And then what happens in 2 years' time if there's a crash and it comes down by 25%? Do you get a rebate from the government?
I just don't see how it works.
Who's going to value that anyway?
I remember.
How do you value an unrealised gain?
I remember my first backer, Mr. Boyce, saying to me in the 1970s, he was paying 95% wealth tax.
Yes, yes.
And it was only for the top slice. It wasn't the whole thing. But even so, he said, friends of mine, John, would just decided to get on their yacht and go sailing, rather than employ 100 people, 50 people. It wasn't worthwhile doing anything.
It is.
And it's not at that level now by any means, but the sentiment is the same. Why would you bother risking your reputation, your money, your energy, your reputation to employ 100 people in a new business if the taxman's taken most of it?
You know what's changed now? I mean, I remember seeing a interview with Michael Parkinson, the chat show host, and he was reflecting on doing his TV show in the 1970s. And he said that one of the biggest problems was that he couldn't find many people in the UK to interview because all the big names had left. And it made me think that in the 1970s, if you were a movie star, if you were a singer, if you were a pop band, you had a highly mobile career and business. Now, how many more people have highly mobile businesses? Because in the 70s, it was pre-IT and all of that, it was really only a few people that were mobile in that way.
Southern Ireland, or Ireland as it is now, had a zero tax rate for sports stars and music stars, because they knew that they came to live in Ireland, they would spend money and it would be good for the economy.
Absolutely. And it does seem balmy. I do see, I am worried because I don't think any of us, we all know people who are either thinking about it, planning it, considering it, gone, can't go because of family reasons or whatever.
Well, that's one reason most people who I know aren't going, who would like to go, is for family reasons. And grandchildren and all the rest of it.
And that is sad.
Really sad. Really, really sad. And it wasn't a lot better under the Tories, let's be honest. But we've got a socialist government. That's what people they need to realise, that this is a socialist government.
I get that, and I know it's a socialist government, but you see Keir Starmer inviting to Downing Street Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, and he's saying, and he said, we need companies like BlackRock to fuel economic growth in the UK. Words of that effect. And BlackRock is an asset management company, which basically means they'll buy up your country's assets,
strip it,
and shift the profits outside of the UK without paying any tax.
Without even thinking about it,
and they have an asset base which is more than the GDP of the UK. So what's the balance of power going to be? Is that really better than encouraging UK-based entrepreneurs who are going to spend and live in the UK?
Is that really what we want to do in this country? Labour have always loved big business for some bizarre reason, but not the wealth creators in their own country, and I can never get my head around it.
And property, I don't know whether you heard this story, but the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund have just bought half of Covent Garden.
Yes, I read that,
600 and something million pounds. It's an amazing amount of money. So again, this is an example where foreign-based companies or organizations are buying UK assets and the rent and the money from that. I mean,
it's leaving the country.
Keir Starmer is excited about Universal Studios opening a theme park in Bedfordshire. What does that mean? You know, that is going to be set up with a fancy offshore structure. They're building a theme park which is basically going to extract money, extract wealth
out of the country,
from the UK, out of the country. And he's thrilled about 28,000 jobs for young people manning a hot dog stand on minimum wage.
It'll be very interesting to know what is the percentage of properties in London owned by English companies, apart from the Duke of Westminster. I bet it's not very high.
No, we know
Do you know
that.
the answer?
I don't know the answer,
I'm
but I know it's more than
Ranjan.
half. I know it's more than half.
Yeah.
I know it's more than half.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because London has been seen as a
safe haven.
A safe haven and a safe haven store of wealth.
Yeah.
But I think what I don't understand is the discouragement of UK-based
I agree.
people for
It doesn't
doing
make any sense.
And the encouragement of people abroad.
They've literally let, until recently, of course, they even got a stamp duty relief if you were a foreign investor. Well, yet someone in the UK that wanted to buy in Mayfair was charged far more in stamp duty than someone from abroad. That made no sense either.
Now, bringing it back to property, do you think the luxury end of the property market is stuffed under a socialist government?
Yes.
With all the things that we've got going on?
Certainly central London, yes.
What about, the country pile, in your neck of the woods? A £2 million plus detached house.
I mean...
Is that all stuffed as well?
To a point. I think what people tend to do is, of course, cash in London or the home counties and buy in Suffolk, Norfolk, for a quieter life and all the rest of it. So prices, and they're cashing in and they're selling, they're buying in a cheaper area. But I think at the end of the day, if there's less of them, then there'll be less competition and the prices will come down. Yeah, definitely.
Do you think they'll do anything drastic to stop this exodus?
No, I don't think they will. I think one or two people mentioned an exodus tax or something. Exit tax. That's a bit draconian, isn't it? Don't you think, to do that?
I think Australia have done something similar. France are talking about it. Canada discussing it.
If other countries have done it, we are sheep, so we might follow.
That is the problem. But I think it's it then becomes a bit like, well, North Korea shoot people on the border when they exit.
I agree. And the other thing we haven't touched on, of course, is inheritance tax.
Yes.
You can go to the Isle of Man and avoid inheritance tax.
Can you?
Yeah.
Isn't there a 10-year rule or something?
God knows.
But I think you have to be out for 10 years.
I did look at the Isle of Man. It's a bit windy in the winter. You can't fly in the winter. And there's only one reasonable hotel on the island.
I'm sure you have to be out for 10 years.
I'm not quite sure why people would want to do that. But I mean, a lot of people do go to the Isle of Man to avoid tax.
Yeah.
And of course, what I didn't realise when I was there looking at a deal, and the internet went flying through. So every time you just do anything, you get the website like that. And the reason is, all the gambling companies are based on the Isle of Man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they've got all the internet. It's unbelievable, the internet.
There's a lot of centres like that. Gibraltar's big for the gambling, and Malta as well, apparently. Yeah. A lot of people setting up there.
So Isle of Man is the place to go, but it's a bit wet and cold in the winter.
That's the problem. It doesn't really have the weather.
Not really, no.
But I think it is. I feel it's very sad that
people are leaving. I agree.
Entrepreneurialism is not encouraged.
Well, it's not being considered as I agree. It's not encouraged. It's almost looked down upon. Well, if you've got more money, you should pay more tax. I'm not sure that's really the case, or should be the case.
And of course, it's certainly having an effect on the luxury property market. So I think for us investors and developers, it is about, and I find that in recessionary times anyway, it's best to focus on the entry-level market.
Yeah. I think good, if you can invest in the best areas you can afford to invest in at sensible levels, That's got to be the answer. You want to, in a tough market, toughish market, you want to play safe.
Yeah.
You want to play safe.
Okay, well, that's it for this video. If you are thinking to join the Millionaire Exodus, then let us know in the comments what you're thinking, what you're planning, or are you planning to stay put? It's all absolutely fine. Let us know in the comments below. That's it for this video. See you guys next time.